Good evening and hello. This is the Drive-In podcast with Ned, and
TK.
today we're going to discuss quite appropriately the movie Drive from 2011, which starred Ryan Gosling,
Bryan Cranston, Albert Brooks,
Carey Mulligan, and Oscar Isaac.
and
Yeah, and a great many other talents. So I suspect it will be an interesting evening.
one thing about I have to say about this movie is uh, very appropriately we have different tastes, of course, as many people do have. But I think this is the movie that we both love equally very much.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we can begin by discussing this, how I mean, how each of us were introduced to this, and I sort of, uh, I was introduced to it by word of mouth by a friend who was, and by reviews online. This guy said that, well, the beginning is very interesting, but the rest of the film is boring, and I started to see these review pop up, and I saw the trailer, and I just by reading and watching these trailers and reading the reviews, I sort of figured out that this looked really interesting. The plot looked intriguing, and yeah, and I told you about it, and your initial reaction was to say no.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. I hadn't heard of the film. I actually hadn't I didn't know anybody involved in the film. I'd heard of Ryan Gosling before, I'd heard of The Notebook, but I hadn't seen any of his work previously. And you actually, I was very, I was you actually convinced me very good to see it because you actually sent me the trailer. I remember, and
Yeah, and that was what I was about to mention. So the
yeah,
trailer is very, it doesn't present the film, or I mean it does advertise the film well, you could say, but it doesn't show what sort of film you're going to
yeah,
watch,
yeah.
because I'm sure some of you listeners have heard about this woman who thought she was going to see a Fast and the Furious type movie, but instead got Drive. So it's
And that's exactly the kind of vibe I've got.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
When I saw the trailer, I was thinking, oh God, another Fast and Furious type of, you know,
Shit fest.
yeah, piece of drivel. Um, but yeah, you convinced me, and I said, fuck it, I'll watch it for my friend right here.
Yeah, and
Basically,
and you almost ended up loving it more than me, because you got into this Ryan Gosling phase
yeah,
where you
yeah,
would like
yeah.
buy certain of the what
Yeah,
was the
actually,
merchandise from the
I,
film.
I, I have, I do
Yeah,
have a lot of the props actually.
yeah.
Yeah, but
He does. Believe
but
me.
as I remember when watching it, because right in from the first scene you get sucked in and hooked.
Oh yeah, I mean, I the film begins in a very intense way, because you see him, not in an intense way, but it gets to the point immediately. You are in this chase, uh, or rather, he's driving two guys. Isn't that how it begins?
Yeah, yeah. The thing about I want to
And
say
that film,
something.
Night Call by Krasinski. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I want to say something about that film. Is that first scene? Uh, I guess it's a very good. It's one of the best introductions to a character I have seen
oh yeah,
because
yeah.
um, the first quote line spoken by Ryan Gosling is it's like it's a perfect representation of that character because he's right to the point and he tells you
Yeah,
what he does and you can hear it hear that confidence in his voice that he's really good at what he does. And I guess from the next scene and the way the film is shot by Nicholas Winding Refn is that the camera is it's shot from the car inside a car,
yeah, yeah.
so that gives us like a point of view from the driver himself,
Yeah.
which I liked a lot because in many action films it's more of a spectacle based on
Oh yes, yes.
stunts and explosions and
Because the film was initially conceived as a spectacle. Uh, I mean, they initially wanted Hugh Jackman, and they wanted this big budgeted. I assume
uh,
I assume that sort of Fast and the Furious type
yeah,
action
yeah,
movie,
yeah,
and and that would have made. I'm sure it would have made for an interesting and or a competent film or passable film. But I think this approach to the car action here is great because that initial that initial chase is one of the best I've ever seen. Partially due to the way it's shot. It's shot very well, but you also see how skilled he is because he's able to outmaneuver anyone. You know the scene where with the police car where he's
yeah.
able to sort of
React quickly
yeah,
and
yeah, 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 and
basically fade into the darkness.
yeah,
Yeah,
and the way you see these two guys who is driving,
yeah,
they just look at each other when he's like, and they just oh shit,
yeah,
he's the real deal,
yeah, yeah,
and
exactly.
yeah, and it's in that way it is pretty great. Mm.
Yeah, I definitely have to say because it's probably my second favorite film of all time, and I guess I remember when I was sitting in the theater with you, and it was more of like an experience. I know there's an interview on YouTube where Ryan Gosling basically uh, he explained why he chose Nick Refn as the director.
Yeah,
He was at Cannes and he was watching Valhalla Rising, which is another great movie by Nick
yeah.
Refn.
I mean, I enjoy that
And
too. So
and he basically said that he was very intrigued by the reactions.
mm.
This one scene in Valhalla in Valhalla Rising.
Was it the one where they were fighting and he just
Yeah, yeah,
yeah rips his
rip
yeah
his
shit
intestines off, and Ryan basically
fucked
said
up.
he was very intrigued in the reaction to that scene. That some people were like screaming and howling, some people could not look, and it was very diverse and very different reactions. And
Yeah,
that's
I was in the former. I
and that,
cringed.
yeah, that's exactly the kind of experience it was watching Drive because
Yeah.
at the time watching it, in the moment when I was watching the movie at the
Mhm.
theater, I wasn't exactly sure, even though if I liked it or not, if you understand what I
Yeah, yeah.
mean, because I guess it points to it's a it's a very diverse in genres, I guess you could say, because
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
it's an action film as well as a romance story.
it's a thriller. It's
Yeah,
a crime film.
and
It has some horror elements. Even I feel with with the scene where he just decides to put this mask on and just
yeah, the way he basically transforms
yeah, yeah. I
into
mean, the driver is by far one of the most
he's,
interesting characters of modern cinema.
yeah,
I think
exactly.
I think we'll speak a little bit about this later when we discuss where we can discuss certain when we discuss the characters and such. But he sort of is like he's sort of like a Clint Eastwood type character from the Man with or from the Dollars trilogy. If
Yeah,
anyone you are familiar with that, he's a guy who has a lot of who doesn't when you see him you sort of see you see that there's something he's hiding and when you get to the latter part of the film you sort of see what sort of person he is in some ways hiding within himself that he is there's this scene in the film where Nino sort of asks him where Nino tries to appear tough to him over the telephone and you feel you sort of you're afraid for this guy because he sort of hesitates when he responds to him.
yeah,
But when you sort of see at the end there what a dangerous and scary person the driver really is, I mean, you feel sorry for these two mobsters because you realize that this guy is the real deal. He is a dangerous psychopath almost. I mean,
Yeah, I agree. I agree with all of that, and I also want to add that the character of Driver himself, I guess I could see myself in him a little bit.
Okay.
Ryan Gosling did an interview. I can't remember with
Was it
what.
about the movies thing?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
He basically said that the point what intrigued him about this character was that the driver is basically someone who's seen too many movies.
Yeah, like us in some
Yeah,
sense.
yeah, he's seen too many movies, and he has these heroes
Yeah.
from these films, and he's trying to be like one,
Yeah.
and I can definitely relate to that. I mean,
Sure.
we all have people we look up to
Yeah, I
and
mean,
heroes.
there's even been made movies about those kinds of situations, like Kick-Ass.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I guess those two movies are very different, but it's sort of like, yeah, a guy who, I mean, Kick-Ass is more openly about it. In Drive, it's sort of, it, I guess
Uh,
Gosling sort of just described the type of guy he envisioned the driver to be, but I sort of, yeah, I think many people want to do the right thing, and it's kind of interesting that when you look at the driver, you sort of see a guy who could just as easily be just a pure evil person, but for some reason he just warms up to this young woman and her son.
yeah. Well, the thing about that is, it's because he wants to be innocent and I guess like a better term, normal. He wants to have a normal life
Yeah,
and a family. But but he can't have that because of the background of the character.
which we don't know. I mean, you read James Sallis' novel,
Yeah,
the,
I've read the book and
so perhaps you know a little bit more.
and it goes in detail about his background, which is actually pretty sad. I won't spoil anything, but
Oh, sure, it's a discussion, so
uh,
you can reveal it.
okay, I might as well do that. Well, basically, the driver himself left his home when he was 16, I think, and he kind of got introduced to that world of crime and violence at a very
Yeah,
young age. So I guess you could say it becomes a part of him at a very young
yeah,
age,
okay.
and that's why I think he can't have a normal life because that crime and
Yeah,
that
it's
violence will always lead him back,
yeah, yeah, I see.
and and that's what's so also sad about the character because I can relate to him in the sense that he wants to be a hero, he wants to be a good guy,
Yeah.
but he can't do that.
No.
And
Um,
and you have also, of course, the story about the frog and the scorpion and the frog.
yeah, you talked about that. I remember.
Well, yeah, it's basically it's basically the story about the scorpion and the frog, in which the scorpion carries the frog over a river,
Yeah.
and the scorpion, or rather, the frog carries the scorpion
Okay.
from one point to another, and the scorpion stings the frog because it's in its nature,
Hmm.
as in Driver's character, it's in its nature that he will get stung. I mean, yeah, basically, basically like that. Um, and and there's one thing you have to also remember. The driver is fucking cool, man.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he sort of dresses like a trendy European guy. I mean,
Yeah,
I've actually heard some criticism about the way he dressed because many people felt that it was a bit too clean, a bit too, for his background. He was supposed to be like a working class type of guy, and he dresses like this European.
yeah, with the Patek Philippe watch
Yeah, yeah,
swish.
yeah. But he dresses like this European socialite. You sort of imagine.
I mean, we live in
We
Norway.
just yeah, sure, sure. I mean, we just saw the talented Mr. Ripley. He sort of dresses in that same type of stylish, very clear-cut way. And yeah, I mean, he looks like a very smooth guy who can get a ton of girls, but for some reason he sort of keeps to himself. And yeah, and I guess we'll follow the plot, and we'll talk a little about the characters that inhabit this world with the driver as we go along. As we talked about earlier, the film has opened with this chase, and uh, he's able to outmaneuver the police, and he leaves in the night. And the day after, he's at the place where he works, essentially a car shop, not a car shop, but a car
Garage.
garage.
Yeah.
Where we meet, or we actually met Shannon earlier in the film, which is his, in some ways, his mentor
Yeah, yeah.
and an employer who sort of provides him with many of these escape cars, which are all they're all so nice cars.
Yeah,
Like he's like, oh, look at this nice. I mean, yeah, I mean it's and Shan himself is. Let's talk a little about him too. He's a very. You can tell that he views the driver as his son.
yeah, basically.
You can see that there's a father and son relationship going on there. Uh, you learn during the film that he has had a lot of failed attempts at reaching a sort of
American Dream.
yeah. He
Basically.
it's shown in the film that he limps, and it's hinted that. And Bernie, which is another cool character that we'll discuss a bit later, sort of explains that he got in trouble with the mob for lending some money, and so I guess they broke his leg, and they gave him some permanent damage.
Which is another great thing because it just shows you how fucking scary the mob is.
Yeah, I know it's kind of, and the thing is that we don't really see any of the. I mean, we see scary mob. There are scary mob guys in this film. You know, you have Bernie and Nino, but they are not the. They are not. I mean, they are essentially small fry in the
Yeah,
hierarchy. So yeah. Where was I? You know that they go into the and during his workday, he meets this beautiful young woman and this young boy, and you know their car has broken down,
yeah.
and
And you can see from that point on when he meets Irene.
you can just see a chemistry. I mean, I'm sure I'm sure most of you have felt that sort of chemistry with a person where it's just the looks that you give each other.
Yeah, yeah.
You just feel that there's instantly something there,
And the thing about that is a lot of people didn't like that because I guess that a lot of people say that there's a lot of staring in the film,
yeah,
which I guess I
it's
kind of get that, but I think that's one of the things that makes the film very good. Is that creates a sort of uncomfortable, but at the same time a very cute atmosphere.
yeah. I mean, it's a very I mean, it is a very cute romance because you know they don't really know what to think of each other other than that they are very attracted.
Yeah,
They can tell that the other person is attracted, and it's kind of sort of in that case or state, I should say, where they simply don't know how to communicate. But it's very, in some ways, it's very sweet. It's a very pure uh, romance, and you sit there and you feel like, yeah, I want this to work out for them, and yeah, I mean, let's get back to the plot here. Their car is broken down, and he sort of asks them if, and he
drives him home basically.
yeah, I mean Shannon sort of tells him like, hey, sort of tries
Why
to
do,
be
yeah,
a
why
wingman and just
yeah,
hey,
yeah.
hey, drive her
Why
home.
why don't you drive her home?
Yeah, and it cuts to the they drive, and the driver sort of asks, yeah, let's asks, do you want to go somewhere? And it cuts to this beautiful.
Beautifully shot scene, I
Yeah,
must
yeah.
say.
The cinematography in this scene is wonderful, and the song is so
It's so
such
fitting.
it's so I mean the songs it's I mean the song that plays is Real Hero by College and
Electric Youth, I
yeah,
think.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Electric Youth.
you're
Yeah.
right, and it fits so perfectly. I mean it's like
It's this, I guess, innocent sort of song, and
yeah, I guess, but it's also you could sort of you could almost relate it to it's kind of fitting because you sort of listen to it and it's almost about a guy. I mean it's it's Real Hero, but you can sort of think about it in the driver's terms that he sort of tries to be a good person.
yeah,
I guess you could sort of view him as a character who is in some ways fundamentally bad, but who tries to be a real hero,
yeah.
tries to be a good
As we
person.
alluded out, that
Yeah, yeah.
simply wants to have a normal and good life, and that's and we can see that.
And he's a fairly young guy too, isn't he? In the books, he's like 20, in his
I think
mid
he's
to early
in
20s or
yeah
something.
in his mid 20s.
Yeah,
I guess about 25. I can't remember the exact
I get,
age, but
yeah, but it's sort of unimportant. But yeah,
yeah,
do continue.
yeah. I guess and that scene from with the real hero in it. I guess I got that sort of music video vibe with it, and
In some, yeah, in some ways.
that very sweet and cute
Yeah, I mean,
romance.
oh yeah, oh, you sit there and you just think, wow, this is, and he's so good, and the driver is just the way he treats this kid in this wonderful way. They're
Yeah,
sitting there, they're like throwing
and that's the point.
rocks.
That's the point when in the film, in the theater, when I was like, just had a smile on my face for like 10 straight minutes
Yeah,
because
yeah, yeah.
it was just so adorable.
It
The
was
little
because
kid.
it's just great to see. Yeah, it's just great to see when someone.
I guess in some way you can explain it as because the driver is such a intimidating character, and you see a softer side of him.
Yeah, I guess you in some ways. I mean, the thing, I wasn't necessarily that intimidated by him at that point, but I still, there's still something about this guy that irks you, I guess. I mean, he's very silent, almost a bit too silent. Uh, um, he doesn't express himself too much, and when people don't really, I guess you're right in the sense that it can be a bit intimidating when people are like that, when they have this silence, and yeah, you're right. It sort of humanizes him. So it sort of shows that he can have a different side to himself. Yeah, and they sort of establish this relationship almost. I mean, not in real boyfriend girlfriend type,
No, but
but it's
I think
sort of like yeah, we know each other and yeah.
I'm basically falling in love. That's how I would
Yeah, I
describe it.
mean it's in the early stages of that,
Yeah, early
and
phase of falling in love.
later we sort of and I guess within a short time span of the film, Shannon goes and talks to his friend Bernie,
Yeah,
who is a Jewish gangster, and Bernie's associate Nino, who was supposedly the guy who was responsible for Shannon's limp,
yeah,
and they're sort of discussing. Uh, they sort of want. Shannon wants Bernie to sponsor the driver because he recognizes that this guy has some real talent. And yeah, and this is what we've actually forgotten to mention is that the driver has two jobs.
yeah. It's
And
so
in daytime, he's a stuntman driver. He drives for big Hollywood films, and in the evenings, he is a getaway driver.
yeah. I guess you could say he has a dual personality.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, you could say that. I mean, he
just as probably like his heroes. I guess.
Yeah, in some ways, yeah, that's true. I mean, what Shannon is attempting to do here is that he's trying to give him he's trying to get him to drive professionally for I guess NASCAR or any of the other driving related.
Racing.
Yeah, and at the beginning there, you know, after Shannon or after Bernie sees him drive, it's like, yeah, and they sort of get introduced. You have this great scene where it's like, my hand's a little dirty.
Yeah, when
And it's like, yeah, so are mine.
so am I.
It's kind of cool, a little cool. It sort of alludes to Bernie's profession, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
But what is also established there is that Shannon is a guy who, in many instances, or at least in one instance, has been trying to do something similar to what he's trying to do with the driver. He and fails, and that's the sort of thing that Bernie asserts or mentions, is that this guy tends to fail when he tries to accomplish things.
Yeah, yeah, and also I so I just wanted to comment on the villains, Nino and Bernie. Is that,
Yeah, I mean
um,
it's a great role from Ron Perlman. I mean he is he's I mean when he essentially when he talked about with Nicholas Winding Refn about this film, it was sort of like Nicholas was like asking him why do you want this small role in this film, because you are a actor who tends to be in bigger productions, and he's sort of and Ron Perlman said that, you know, Nino is a Jewish man who wants to be an Italian gangster, and Ron Perlman said that, and I'm a Jewish guy from New York. So you could sort of,
he was
and
basically born to play that role.
in some ways, yeah, because he's sort of that's the sort of vibe you get from Nino. He's a very foul-mouthed man. He you could sort of tell that he's a wannabe gangster. He wants to be like he wants to be like Ray Liotta and
Yeah,
in Goodfellas
yeah.
and
Which is a
Robert.
very overrated movie, might I add.
Yeah.
But that's for another story.
Yeah, that's for another story. But he wants to be that stereotypical Italian mobster who goes around and speaks like a stereotypical and pistol whips people, I
Yeah.
guess. And Bernie, his accomplish or his partner is sort of the exact opposite. He's a very soft-spoken man. He's a very confident and calm man, and he's from the get-go a intimidating figure.
Yeah. The thing I wanted to point out was that Nino and Bernie, especially in Bernie's sakes, are those kind of villains in the way that they are portrayed in Drive are very real, in the sense that this is what Albert Brooks said, that the character of Bernie doesn't like to do what he does. Because
Yeah, or rather, he doesn't like to be mean. I think it was.
yeah, yeah,
I mean,
basically,
it's clear that he and Shannon are friends. For
yeah,
instance, I
he
mean,
likes to have him around, as he said in the film.
yeah,
But yeah, I guess they're that Bernie Rose and Nino are a lot more different in what we see in stereotypical Italian gangsters or mobsters.
yeah. I guess it depends on what sort of film you're talking about, because, but yeah, I mean, in those action movies, I can agree. Like the Stallone movies or the Steven Seagal movies, where some of the bad guys are simply bad guys, but especially Bernie, or I guess you could say that Nino tries to be like those types of bad guys,
Yeah,
whereas
yeah,
Bernie is more like a I guess you could compare him more like Marlon Brando's character in The Godfather. He's a guy who is in a position where he is because he really probably can't do anything else.
Yeah, that's basically what he's good at.
Yeah, and another funny note about Bernie is that he used to produce action movies,
Yeah, the
which were
European
called,
flags.
yeah, which were like compared to European flags.
Which is exactly what this movie is basically is. It's like a tribute to 80s and
Yeah,
80s action
I
and
mean,
car
many
films.
people have compared it to the Michael Mann film Manhunter, which I actually saw in the summer. So, and the similarities are striking. I mean, if you guys haven't seen it, you should check it out because it's a very unique film. It's an adaptation of the Thomas Harris novel. Yeah. So yeah, I guess we'll go back to the plot now. And yeah, so after we sort of get introduced to these two characters, we learn that Irene already has a husband.
Well, she did mention it earlier in the film, but he
Yeah.
has just been released from
Yeah,
prison.
yeah.
And I guess
Standard
from
Gabriel, played by Oscar Isaac. I mean, which now recently we saw in Star Wars. Is going to star in X-Men Apocalypse, and when you watch this movie again, you get shocked to see him because it's a fairly small role, and I mean I guess it's kind of significant, but he just kind of is there, and that's kind of strange now, isn't it?
yeah, because you kind of see how far he's come.
Yeah, I mean he did show that he had acting chops in this movie, but or yeah, in Drive, but now he has exploded globally too, I think. So this sort of puts a stop to this romance in a sense. I mean,
They're still friends, but he doesn't hang out around them, which a lot, which and you could see it in Ryan Gosling's performance at that point that he's really hurt by this, and
yeah,
he basically goes back to being alone and goes back to that nightlife. And I remember that point, that scene in the cafe. Remember when the guy approaches him and he tells him about that job, and he basically responds angrily.
yeah, well, yeah.
And I think
This is sort of
and I think that that's because the driver himself is angry that he doesn't want to go back to being to that crime and world of violence. Basically.
yeah, and he or necessarily that life of isolation.
Yeah.
I mean, he felt that these two people can be a way for me out.
An escape, basically.
Yeah, and he reacts. I mean, not violently, but you sort of get this. You sort of get introduced to this dark side of him.
Yeah.
Where he sort of tells this guy.
The first hint at.
Yeah, it is, and the guy sort of essentially just tells him that my brother died after this failed job because we didn't have you.
Yeah.
And his reaction is like, well, I don't want to do anything more with you. Get the fuck away, or I will kill you. Essentially, and he comes off as extremely intimidating, and that's sort of the first sign
of what Nicholas Winding Refn described as a transformation.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, that makes sense.
Well, yeah. Well, you have the elevator scene, which is
but that comes a bit later.
But you have the elevator scene when I guess which you can basically describe it as the driver's I guess his final form, in a way that he really transforms into a monster.
Yeah, I mean it's it's this beautifully shot scene where he's standing there with Irene and he's giving her a goodbye kiss, and there's another guy in the elevator, and he just beats the shit out of him. quite literally. I mean
he stomps the fucking shit out of him. That's what he does.
He he starts by beating him, and he ends up stomping literally the brains out of him.
Yeah.
And
Uh, I guess the violence in this film. I remember when watching the film in the theater that the violence really put me off. Not in a way that, oh shit, I don't like this. Uh, exactly the opposite, because it just came out of nowhere.
yeah, it does. I mean, it's as we mentioned earlier, it is a movie that it fits so many genres. It's so calm in certain moments, and then it becomes so violent.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So I guess we'll go back to the plot here. We later find out that Standard Gabriel, played by Oscar Isaac, has a debt to some guys in prison that were sort of
Protection
protecting.
money.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and he later gets beat up by it. And despite despite the fact that the driver is deeply in love with Irene, and that he has sort of started to love her son, uh, he wants to help this guy. I guess he in some ways tries to be a good man again. He thinks that, well, I want to help. I'm going to help. I mean,
I'm going to help what makes me happy, but um, I don't know. Do you think he does it because of Irene and Benicio, or because he genuinely feels sorry for Standard?
I think he does it for the woman and child.
Yeah,
Mostly,
yeah.
I think he cares about their well-being. I mean, and even even in an earlier scene, it's
Hypothetically, if the driver would have, if let's say Standard,
didn't die, or
no, let's say Standard didn't have Benicio or Irene, he was just a standalone character.
yeah.
Do you think the driver would have reacted and helped him?
I don't know. I mean, I guess it depends on how close they were. I mean, if it had been a similar instance to say the guy who he had previously just driven once, I think he would have outright outright said no. But if it had been someone close to him like Shannon, yeah, I think he would have helped him. But I think yes. So we learned this, and yeah, and we sort of get introduced to another guy named Cook, who is even lower on the food chain than Bernie and Nino. This guy is like a slime that runs his own strip joint, and sort of learn that, yeah. And we get introduced to Blanche, played by Christina Hendricks, who we are both very fond of. I think anyone with I think any man who is heterosexual
I think,
would find her
I think,
quite enticing.
yeah, we've watched some Mad Men, and
Yeah. I mean that was the only reason I was able to finish the first season, because it's a dull show. But we sort of get introduced to these two characters that they sort of want them to rob this pawn shop that contains a bag, which again supposedly contains about $50,000.
yeah, something like that.
And they rob this pawn, and they're in the process of robbing this pawn shop, and these it seems that I don't know. Is it clear if they were set up, or
Yeah,
at least there were some other guys?
yeah, I think that it was that Nino double crossed him
Yeah,
and left him hanging so he can take the money by himself.
yeah,
So it's basically a botched robbery, but
yeah. It is, and it sort of ends with Standard's death, and so and we get this very very well shot drive scene, or chase scene, I should say. I mean, it's so yeah. I mean, it's so well shot. It's especially in contrast to what you see in many modern films like the Fast and the Furious. I mean,
it's a lot more realistic than what you
yeah,
see.
it is. I mean, it's more about their driving skills. There are no fancy explosions. I mean,
the thing about what makes this scene so great, in my opinion, is that
I mean, if it
it
had been in a Fast and the Furious one, you would have. I mean, I guess you got. I mean, have you seen those movies? I mean, they're like driving with bank vaults behind them, and it's like makes
yeah,
no sense. I
I've seen
mean,
the Fast Five
oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
and
Oh shit.
and the second film in the series, and I can basically say that I watched enough of that piece of garbage.
Yeah,
Anyway,
same.
what I was saying was that the thing about that particular scene and Drive, what makes it so good is that still, just like in the beginning of the film, we see we see um, we see the driving from Ryan Gosling's character,
Yeah.
and we see that he's clearly scared. He's sweating, and you see his like facial expressions, and that also helps with the fact that we don't know who's chasing him.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, that's a good point. We
th-
don't really know if this is some people sent from by Nino
or some other guys. Yeah,
or yeah or is this the East Coast Mafia,
yeah,
which
yeah,
they mention a couple of times during the film.
yeah. Anyway, so the driver is basically a much better driver, and they managed to escape.
And they just go into this motel, I guess.
They find a motel, and he finds out that
Yeah,
Nino Cook's plan was basically to double cross them. That
yeah.
was
I mean,
the
it
plan.
was a really. It's this interrogation scene where we once again get introduced to this other side of the driver. But
Yeah,
he just starts almost beating her up, and he's a scary. This is a scene where you just think that wow, this guy is scary. Just when he's like, well, this is the father of a young child that you just got killed. You're telling me what I want to know,
yeah.
and yeah, and then what happens? Tell me.
Then what happens? I also want to add that Ryan Gosling's acting in that scene was fucking tremendous.
Yeah, I mean, I
Uh,
think I think a lot of people mention that this film was Oscar snubbed in almost every
it's
category.
yeah.
Both. I mean,
It got shit on that one. That's what's fucking happened.
yeah, I agree. I mean, I think everyone from the main cast gave Oscar-worthy performances, especially Gosling
Albert Brooks, Carey Mulligan,
and yeah, and Ron Perlman.
Ron
Yeah,
Perlman,
he was great.
and the star of this film, Nicholas Winding Refn.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure. I mean, I can.
Not to mention the cinematography
Oh
and
yeah, yeah. Shit.
the score by
Was-
Cliff Martinez. So anyway, at this point in the movie, the driver and Blanche are basically attacked by a couple of thugs,
Yeah, I mean,
henchmen,
hired guns.
hired guns by
Sent by Cook
Cook or Nino.
I imagine.
and
I mean, the driver essentially beats the shit out of them. They both have guns, and he just. This is sort of the introduction in the film to the violence that we will see later, because he stabs one guy with some metal thingy, and yeah, I mean it's shot beautifully, and you just the shot sort of ends with Ryan Gosling standing there with blood smeared all over his face, and it's kind of he just
and I remember we were because in the theater we were in complete fucking shock.
yeah,
I
right.
remember your face because
Where
it
did
just came out of
yeah?
nowhere.
Where the fuck did this come from?
And I really have to point out that it was fucking. That goes out to Nicholas Winding Refn because that directing was awesome in that scene.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I mean, yeah. I mean, once again, the way it's sort of shot and the way it just comes out of nowhere. This,
Yeah, yeah.
you know, when Blanche gets shot, I guess. I
Yeah.
think it starts begins with her
And the
immediate.
Blaine's blown out.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh. Um,
well, because that scene, we talked about the genres early on because it goes from a action film to a romance to action, and then we get that violence.
yeah.
So-
And from there on, it's essentially a crime thriller about the guy who wants to ensure the safety of the people he cares about.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so later I guess later he goes to Cook's place, uh, and once again you realize how tough this guy is because he just beats the shit out of Cook.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, this bullet here.
Uh,
Or didn't that happen before, perhaps? Because I mean, little Benicio, their son, gets this bullet from one of the guys who beat up Standard.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
and which Benicio's son gave to Ryan Gosling in the
no,
film, right?
no, Benicio's the boy. Standard is,
Oh yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Benicio gave to Ryan Gosling in the film. Um, so yeah, basically in that film where he tries to find out what the fuck happened, basically.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, yes, and he sort of what they sort of figure out, what I guess what Bernie and Nino finds out is that they've been trying to steal from the East Mafia mob, which is Bernie sort of says that you don't fuck with these guys,
And
and
it's just pointed to the difference of Bernie and Nino's characters is that Bernie, it kind of reminds me of Mice and Men, where I can't remember what the characters' names were, but the main character had to take care of this other guy played by John Malkovich.
well, yeah, it's the one with the big stupid guy and the smaller, more intelligent guy.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So there's one guy that's more intelligent than the other and has to like pick up his scraps and clean up after him.
Yeah.
And so forth. And that's basically what Bernie does is like clean up after Nino.
Yeah, in some ways, I mean, what is sort of what sort of happens. I think Bernie even wants to do things differently, but he just realizes that I can't. There are no. We have to erase all the ties to us, and what happens then is one of the most brutal and disturbing scenes in the film, and which there are many of, by the way. This is not a film you want to watch if you have a soft heart. You don't want to watch this film because it is violent, where he just flat out kills Cook.
In the restaurant.
Yeah, in the restaurant, he just picks up a knife and just
Slides his throat.
yeah,
That's a great scene.
it is. It's perfectly acted from both Brooks and
The guy who played Cook.
more Ron Perlman and Brooks, but yeah, I guess him too.
Yeah, basically.
And what then happens is that the driver tries to warn Shannon that you gotta, or he warns Shannon that this thing has blown out of proportion.
You need to get out of here.
I was
basically.
almost killed, and you have to get out of here. And sadly, Bryan Cranston doesn't make out of this.
But
He gets
Bernie slices his
wrists.
yeah.
I mean, I guess he gives him in some ways because they are friends. It's sort of established that these guys are friends, and I guess I'll believe Albert Brooks in the sense that Bernie is not a guy who enjoys killing people. I
And
mean,
we see that after he kills Shannon, he just sits down and like stares into the distance, and I think he really cares.
yeah, I think he
points
does
out.
too. I think there is a mutual friendship there, and after that we sort of cut to the
Elevator scene, right?
yeah, I guess it is. I mean, what happens then is the elevator scene, which we spoke about earlier, which is probably one of the most beautifully shot scenes I have ever seen.
I think definitely the best scene in the film, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so too, because it's as we said earlier, it just goes from different genres so quickly. Romance to just brutal action, and you have this beautiful.
Cinematography, the lighting was perfect because you kind of see when they kiss.
Yeah.
It's so beautifully lit, and it's so bright.
And then it just cuts to that, you know.
yeah. It goes dark again. It's so beautifully shot. It's very metaphoric, I guess.
Yeah, and you know, it just goes to this scene where he just and just.
Stomp
I mean,
this.
the thing is that the thing is that it's not necessary for him to. He was essentially out after he knocks his head towards the walls in the elevator.
Yeah,
I mean, you could just imagine it at least, and yeah, and he just proceeds to just, and you literally hear the skull just
crushing.
cave in. I mean, it gets crushed, and you just see Irene's expression when she's
She's horrified.
yeah. I mean,
Basically.
she sees that the man she's in love with is this.
And that's what we alluded to earlier, the transformation scene.
Yeah.
He sort of becomes a werewolf in some way, or a
Yeah,
monster.
I guess.
And the one thing earlier, after he stops, smashing that guy's skull,
Yeah,
we see a shot of his jacket, the
Yeah.
scorpion.
okay, yeah.
And we see the scorpion moving sort of way, and I think that symbol of that story he tells on later,
Okay.
the story about the scorpion and the frog, and that in some way either he stung, or in that,
Or he gets stung, perhaps?
yeah, either he gets stung or he stung himself basically.
Yeah.
And, the scorpion is on his back as it was on the frog in the story about the scorpion and the frog.
Yeah.
Uh,
And you see this terrified expression on his face because I think he's very aware of himself, or what he's capable of.
and basically what he's done.
Yeah, and I think he in some ways are afraid that this side of him will eventually hurt the ones he cares about.
And you sort of see in that facial expression on his face is that
I mean, I guess
he's lost. He basically lost what he loved because I guess that scene is like the point of no return for
yeah,
him.
I guess you could say in some sense it is. And yeah, I mean, it's sort of a combination of shock, of
Loss,
fear.
fear,
I mean,
loss. Yeah.
he sort of expresses a wide range of emotion with just a couple of seconds, and it's sort of I mean, this film is a real testament to Gosling's talent as an actor because he has minimal of dialogue, but he's able to express such a wide range of emotions with
Just his face,
a couple of lines and facial expressions and body language.
Yeah.
And later we sort of cut to. I mean, I know that we earlier said that the elevator scene is beautiful, but then you also cut to the scene where he decides to take on this masks that he often uses while he's stunt driving,
Yeah.
and you have this beautiful soundtrack, and you just cut to him driving. You see Nino at this party.
Yeah, the restaurant. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's fits so perfectly with the scene, and you just see Ron Perlman being a total wannabe Italian douchebag, with the point thing and the blah blah blah.
well, yeah, I agree because well, first of all, the mask is it's pretty creepy if you ask me.
It is. I mean, it looks hyper realistic. At the same time, it's so expressionless. Like the driver himself. I mean, the driver is also scary looking in some ways because he has no real. He's not really a guy who emotes very much.
No.
In some ways.
No, but I guess the mask is you could call it again, as we alluded to earlier, that part of heroes and alter egos and stuff like that.
I guess
that's his costume in some way, along with the jacket.
And he sort of watches Nino and he ends up killing him and throws him off this
Beach.
Yeah, and
That scene was
that scene was scary as fuck because he just
the music adds to that. Like,
Yeah, and I think this is almost where the film goes into horror territory because we
yeah,
just see Nino desperately trying to escape while this tall figure in the background with
yeah.
the expressionless face
The
just
direction
walks.
there and cinematography is great because we don't see the driver's face. We see just a
Just
tall,
black, yeah.
tall, dark figure, which is just again great directing by
Yeah.
Nicholas Winding Refn.
And it's this, you don't even see what's happening to Nino. But I think it is in some ways more terrifying that you don't see because then
Yeah,
you imagine what the drive. I mean, you've earlier seen what this guy is capable of. I mean,
yeah,
he stomps the shit out of one guy.
and it blows the brains out of two other guys. But
Yeah,
yeah, it's sort of scary that you don't know what he does to Nino, and what happens then? Oh yeah,
yeah. I mean,
he
he
meets.
finished and he meets with Bernie and they sort of discuss the. Yeah, I mean, you have to. I mean, if you give me the money, I can get you out of this. And
Basically sparing Irene and Benicio's
yeah,
life, but he tells him that the driver will always have to look out over his.
yeah. I mean, he has to run for the rest of his life. He can never settle down. He can never. He
Which
will,
is again very sad.
I mean, it is sad. I mean, he. I guess he he wanted to live a regular type life with all that such a life encompasses, and he essentially destroys that for himself to help a woman, a child, and a man that I mean he
Because he could have said no, and he could, when Standard asked
he
for
could have
help.
and and yeah and it's kind of a sad ending and they go out they to this car where he's going to and
Yeah, yeah, I was gonna hand him the money, and what I love about this scene is that we see the shadows of the characters
okay
when
yeah
they stab each other.
yeah
Uh,
and it's sort of Bernie decides to try to kill the driver and stabs him in the stomach. I mean, the driver being a young guy in his, a young man in his prime just overpowers him and turns the knife on him. And sort of, I guess the scene sort of cuts to black after that. I mean, a quick question about how this is resolved. Does the driver in the end give the money to?
no, he leaves the money on the
Yeah,
floor
but
with the
but he,
body.
but the girl or rather Irene doesn't get anything.
No, no, she doesn't get anything
Okay.
back. I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, I seem to recall something like that, but okay. Yeah, so we sort of cut to the
This white pan shot of him sitting in the car and
yeah.
just staring into.
You initially assume that he's dead, and the funny thing is that I actually wanted the film to end the way it did, and I did not know how it ended. But I just wanted that song. Right after I heard the song Real Hero in the beginning, I thought, that would be the perfect way to just finish off the film.
Yeah,
And that's exactly what happens. The driver just sits there
stares
and he just blanks once, and you see that he's holding his.
stomach.
And
Yeah,
this song starts, Real Hero starts, and he just drives away. And that's how the film ends. And it's a phenomenal ending. I just have
because
to.
when he stares,
It's so.
and we think that he's gonna die.
I mean, we think that he's already died. Essentially,
Yeah, and
he's
he's just looking at his life basically passing by.
yeah,
And it's a great scene because it ends what he does best, and it's driving.
yeah, yeah.
That's exactly
That's true.
because it just tells you about the character and what the character is good at.
Yeah, and it ends, and yeah, and for me, this is a 10 out of 10 movie. It's one of the best directed movies I've ever seen. It's perfectly acted. For me, it's easily in the top 5 best movies of this decade, the tens?
Well, I've said earlier that it's my second movie of all time, but
Yeah,
in any way, it could also be my first, my all-time favorite movie
yeah,
of
yeah,
all time because everything's perfect. A full 10 out of 10 from me,
yeah.
and probably the biggest Oscar snub in history, in my opinion.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I think so too. I think this was on all accounts, an Oscar snub because this is it's a sort of movie that should have. I mean, I think it is weird that they didn't nominate at least Albert Brooks because he was. The thing is that he before this
He expected that Oscar nomination, I can tell you that.
yeah.
He was disappointed. I remember that he had like posted that funny joke on Twitter.
Yeah, but the thing is that he is he's primarily known for his comedic roles.
Yeah,
He's a guy, he I think he voiced the dad in Finding Nemo. I'm a bit embarrassed that I don't remember his name, but it's not in the title. So, but he has made he's a guy who has mostly been in comedies. I mean, he
yeah.
was in Taxi Driver too,
That
which
was
is
a long time ago.
yeah, which is quite similar to Drive. But I mean, it was really sad to not see him get a nomination, and it was also frustrating not to not see Ryan Gosling getting a nomination because he was phenomenal.
And Nicholas Winding Refn, which in my
Yeah,
opinion
yeah, and the
is it,
cinematographer of this movie. I
yeah.
don't know if perhaps that was Refn.
No, it wasn't Refn. I can't. It's a crime that we don't know
Yeah,
the.
but I mean that guy should. I mean, perhaps it got nominated for cinematography.
No, it was only one thing. It was sound editing. I think. You can just like Ned's surprise at that.
I mean, the sound
So,
editing was great, but like,
all
we're not sitting here and discussing the sound editing.
out of
So,
all the things you would expect the Drive to be nominated for, sound editing is not the first thing that comes up to
no,
mind.
that's yeah, that's a good point. So what about the let's discuss some of the or inspirations that we feel this movie or certain things we can relate this to and sequel ideas because I think a lot of people have pointed out that this is very much similar or the character of the driver is very similar to the Clint Eastwood characters of the Dollars trilogy.
Yeah,
I, th-
in some way, I see some
yeah, I mean, I
similarities.
think especially, do you remember A Fistful of Dollars? The one where he's riding into this town with the opposing side, two opposing gangs,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
the woman and the child, and the
yeah,
family there. I
yeah,
think there's a lot of similarities there because
yeah,
right from the get-go in that film, you don't, or I think what's different between these two characters is that from the get-go, you learn that Clint Eastwood plays a bad guy in some. I mean, he's not a good guy because you see at the beginning that he just watches this kid gets beaten by this big
It
tall.
doesn't care basically.
Yeah, and it's a similar type story, and I understand the comparison well, and I think you should, in some ways, I think you should try to watch those movies a bit before you watch Drive because I think you will get more pleasure out of seeing Drive because I guess you could call the driver sort of an evolution of that type of character. He's
Yeah,
not a guy who's openly tough, but in some ways, I think that in some ways makes him more tough because he's not a guy who perhaps
act
has,
stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
I guess what this movie reminds me of is David Lynch's films. Basically, David Lynch in a lot of his films he uses a recurring metaphor in that um, well, the first scene I remember the first scene in Blue Velvet when you see the first scene and it's basically just grass, right? And he zooms in into the grass and see the bugs and everything inside the grass, and it's dark and it's scary. And I think it's a metaphor uh, when you see things that are innocent and nice,
yeah, yeah,
and when
and
you go
normal,
in,
and normal.
and normal, and when you go into detail, it's not what you think, right? And that's exactly what The Driver is. So I see some similarities between Drive and some of David Lynch's work.
Yeah, I agree. It's in a sense that it's style in its stylishness, and I mean, this is also an art house film
Yeah,
for
and it's
sure.
a
I mean,
tribute to Alejandro Jodorowsky,
okay.
which I actually haven't seen any movie of this, but
No, me neither. Or
so
perhaps I have, but and
maybe we should watch it soon
perhaps
enough.
and discuss it on this show. What about the sequel ideas? I
Yeah,
mean, we heard of the sequel ideas in the late 2011, early 2012,
yeah,
where he
they
sort of like he wanted to make a character that was sort of
Arrival.
yeah, rival or the driver's Moriarty, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Nick Refn
I
one.
mean, so far they've sort of at this point they've sort of scrapped the sequel ideas, but that was a great. That was even a great. That was a great
Concept.
concept.
Yeah.
I mean, if you could like get some an actor who's more openly charismatic, more
The polar opposite of The
yeah, yeah.
Driver,
I mean,
basically.
I remember imagining Christian Bale in that role because he's a guy who's very good at playing charismatic.
Characters,
Yeah,
basically.
but but you read the sequel?
I actually have it on as an audiobook, but I haven't read the whole thing.
No, but
I've read parts.
okay,
And
heard
then
parts.
you
Yeah.
know, listen to parts at the
Mhm.
beginning, but I haven't heard the whole book. I've heard that it's not as good as the first book,
No.
and you should definitely check out the first book because it's a lot different to the film, while at the same time being very similar.
Yeah.
If you love the film, you should definitely read the book because it goes more into depth into the story of the driver, and it's basically an alternative version of the character
Yeah.
himself.
I mean.
While also at the same
I
time
think
being
it.
similar.
Yeah. I think you know that they sort of they cut out a lot of the things is what I understood because we don't really get any backstory for the driver
Yeah,
in the film, and in some ways that works for the character's advantage. You can sort of or to the audience advantage because you can sort of imagine some of the backstories
backstory
yourself.
itself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in that case, the book the book is sort of like a comic book
Okay.
because it has very short chapters, and the driver himself is sort of like a comic book hero.
Oh.
He also talks a lot more in the book,
Okay. Okay.
and
So what is sort of his personality in the book? Because here he's very aloof. He's very
well,
mysterious.
well, he's very mysterious in the book as well. But
Okay.
I think in that way he's similar, but in the book he's more social, basically. What I would say,
Yeah. Social. Yeah.
he has a friend called Manny,
Okay.
which is
Italian guy.
I don't remember the ethnicity.
I mean,
Ethnicity.
I mean,
It's not important,
it's not
but
important.
he actually has a friend in the book that he hangs out with and talks with.
yeah.
So it's a lot. He's a lot more human in the book, I
Yeah.
would say. And I guess that's our review.
Yeah, it is. I mean, if you enjoy this, like it and subscribe to our channel
And share with your friends. Hopefully they like to drive, and if they didn't, maybe they can
yeah, I mean,
give it
I
another
guess
chance.
I guess we should have mentioned earlier that this is I mean, it obviously is spoiler filled, but this is sort of a discussion for those who have seen the film and who wants to hear our point of view. But you know, thank you for listening, and we'll try to make this a monthly thing, or perhaps even a bit more often. So thank you, and looking forward to providing you with more content. Goodbye.